So, first video on the editing channel. See what happens. A bunch of you guys have asked me, how do you make the name tags that are on my videos? The one that looks like this. Well, basically, what you need are 3 objects that I have right here. I've masked one of them out already, but here are the other 2 that are unmasked. Basically, what you want to do is, in my case, I've chosen a rectangle with a snipped corner. Because I have a snipped corner, this corner right here has white. Therefore, I need to mask it out. You always want to mask out parts that are white because you never know what your background is going to look like. Duh. So I'm going to just quickly go over how you want to mask things out. By the way, you're going to need After Effects for this. I believe it does work in HitFilm, but I wouldn't risk it. First, you're going to want to take your object, double click on it, and you just kind of want to zoom so you can see the entire object, so it looks like this. Then you want to go up into the pen tool. You're just going to want to draw one corner way out here, one out here, and then for the rest of these you want to be somewhat precise, you know, get close, and then draw it back up. And what you want to do is you want to zoom in, click on the hand tool over here, or press H on your keyboard, so you can kind of drag around, just like that. Then go back to the pointer tool and mess with the corner until it matches up somewhat closely. Now that that's maxed out, we can kind of drag that wherever we need it to go, and it looks alright. And then you just repeat that process for literally everything else that you want to do. I have 3 layer name tags. You can make more if you want. Just literally take what I have and copy and paste it as many times as you want to do. I would say 3 is about as many as you need though. I've seen people do 5 or 6. It kind of gets long after that, but if you want to go 3, that's fine too. I'm going to mask out this last one over here and then get back to the video. Okay, cool. So now that you have all 3 of your objects masked out, so that way there's the ability to put your name tag on a transparent background here, what you're going to want to do is you just kind of want to rescale them so that you have a good size. So obviously these 3 are way too big, so you're just going to want to select them all by hitting shift and then clicking on them. Then you're going to want to hit this little arrow over here. This drops down the menu for all 3 of these, and you only need to drop the transform menu for actually one of them. Set it, you can just kind of play around with it. I believe 40% is where it's at for me. Yeah, let's go with 50 actually. So now you've had it sort of set up so it's resized properly, you can close the transform menu and layer them up and layer up your objects and kind of get a feel for what it's going to look like. So your name tag, when it's complete, should look something like this. Obviously we haven't animated it yet, so you can, right now it's just sitting here, but that's the reason why we're in After Effects. So you want to select them all and move them off to kind of where you want them to end up. That looks close enough for me. Obviously you can fine-tune this a lot more when you're doing your final version, but this is just a demonstration, so yeah, that's close enough. So now that you have your placement sort of done, what you want to do is you want to move your playhead to 30 frames or half a second, although it depends on when you created your composition. When you created your composition, you should have gotten something that looks something like this. You should have made it 1920 by 1080 at 60 frames per second, and you can make it anything longer than 5 seconds because we're going to be trimming it down to the correct length later anyways. If you didn't make it 60 frames per second, make sure it's at least 30, and I wouldn't make it any random number between 30 or 60. It's either 24, 30, or 60. Now that your composition has kind of been set up properly, you're going to want to move your playhead to half a second, 30 frames for most people, 15 frames if you're doing this at 30 FPS. And you're just going to want to open up the transform menu for all 3 of these. I'm in the wrong tool. There we go. Open up the transform menu for all 3 of these. You're going to want to just create a position keyframe, and that should create a keyframe for Yes, it does. That should create a keyframe for all three of your objects. Once you're done with that, you can move this back. Select all three objects again, and you're just going to want to hit the down arrow until your objects are just out of frame. They will still show up in the editor, and as you can see, After Effects has noticed that you've made a change, and it's created a keyframe for you. So now if you play it back, you'll see that all three of your little name tag objects will come up at the exact same time. That's fine for now. Later on, we will change that. Don't worry, you'll end up getting the cascading effect that I showed you at the beginning, but for now what you want to do is you want to open up just one of your name tags. You're going to want to go down here to the zoom bar, zoom in just a little bit, and you're going to want to right click on position and hit separate dimensions. Then what you can do is you can actually delete the X position keyframes. I like to delete them because it keeps my workspace nice and organized, but if you don't want to, that's fine. After that, you're just going to want to shift click on both of your keyframes so that they're both blue, and then up here there should be a little button that looks like a little graph. It should say graph editor. You want to click on that. Then you're going to want to actually click on the line you have here itself, and then click down here where it says easy ease. You want to click that. And then I like to play around with the handles a little bit. I usually like to do something that looks like that. Basically what the graph editor is it's sort of like a speed visualizer. So it's like, as you can see right here, it says, you know, it's a Y position. It's literally just a graph that you can mess with. When your keyframes are linear, obviously you have a straight line, like a linear function in math. Hopefully you guys all still remember your math. Communication's kind of gotten to all of us. There we go. And basically what that does is when you play it back now, actually I'm gonna move these keyframes. It's hard to see what's going on. Okay, so I've dragged out the keyframe so you can actually see what's going on now. So when I play it, you'll see that the white one up here comes up, in my opinion, a little bit too quickly, but you can see how it starts to slow down as it gets closer. The rest of these will look similar. All you have to do is do exactly what I just did. So go into the next one, turn off your value graph first. Position, right click on it, separate dimensions. Go ahead and delete the X position keyframes. Select them both, value graph, click on this, and sort of play with it until you get, and sort of play with it until you get what you want. So as you can see, because we have the keyframes set at the exact same positions, the top two come on together, and the bottom one, because it's still set to linear, comes on later. So you can see we're getting close. And then you're just going to want to do that with the third one. There you go. They all kind of come on at the same time. It's fine if they're, this one's a bit slow, it's fine if they're like kinda off. It doesn't really matter. So as you can see, that's the value graph. Before we move on, I should probably explain what keyframes do. I kind of forgot to mention that. So keyframes, as you can see, are these little blue dot things on the timeline. These basically tell After Effects, this is where I want this object to be at a specific time. So it's basically like, if we go back to math examples, it's basically like a dot on the coordinate plane, and it's basically telling After Effects at this point in time I want this value to be this. And then After Effects uses what you've given it, in this case the value graph where we have the little manual handles, and it calculates out for the next couple frames where each object has to be in order to line up with the keyframes. So keyframes basically are just hard stops for where you want things to be. So now that we have all three of these in sort of the right place at the right time, we're going to want to open up the bottom two, and all we have to do is select these, move forward 10 frames, and drag them both. Select them, move forward 10 frames, and drag them both. So now what you should have is that. That's too much of a delay. Let's go 5 frames. There we go. Let's try that. So you can see a lot of it is just experimentation, but now that I've gotten it somewhat close, you can see that we've got the in part of the name tag done, and now we have to do the out part of the name tag. So my name tag animation finishes at, I believe, 110. Yes, at 110. So I usually like to leave it for somewhere around 3 seconds, so I'm probably gonna go down to 4-ish seconds. And I want it to end at 5 frames, or at 5 seconds, that's where I want it to end. So we're just gonna do this. I'm gonna go down to this guy down here. Actually, I'm gonna select all 3 of these again. I'm gonna hit the up arrow until they're out of frame. Once you've held down the up arrow for long enough that everything is out of frame, what you're going to want to do is go back 30 frames and then take your original keyframes. So the second one right here, this is the start position. You can see that what's happened is because we've created a new keyframe, After Effects thinks we want the objects to be moving from this keyframe, which is where it ends, to this keyframe throughout this entire 3-second period. We don't want that. Well, we're going to want to go to this keyframe right here, and we're just going to basically take the Y position right here. So it says that. It's a long number. I'm just going to take it, copy it, and go to 430. So I'm going to paste it into the Y position keyframe. I'm going to do that for the rest of them. Pro tip, if you want to select or go onto a keyframe without overshooting or undershooting, you can hold down Shift while moving the playhead, and it will snap to the nearest. Keyframe when it gets there. Super useful tip. This one looks like almost the same website. Yeah. Basically, you just want to take this keyframe and copy and paste it for all 3 of these. So now that you have all of those copied and pasted and good to go, it should take, yeah, something like that. If you notice in the middle that your pieces are drifting between the 2 hold keyframes, the reason why that's happening is because your easy ease is set to both sides, and what that does is it creates, if I go down to these guys here, you can see that creates a weird curve thing down right here. So what you actually want to do, you want to click that middle section right here. You'll see it selects both of these keyframes. You want to hit change to linear, and then go back to each of these keyframes individually. Change this one to easy ease in, drag it back to somewhere close to where it was before, and this one over here, change it to easy ease out, and do what we want with it. So now it should sort of get close. That blue one down here is going to change, but that was the wrong way. My bad. So for the second one, you kind of want to mirror the curve of the first one. So when they come out, you kind of want it to. I don't have this change for the other one, do I? No, it doesn't. Okay. Yeah, you're going to want to sort of emulate the curve at the beginning there. So it should look like that. And then I will change this bottom one and get right back to you guys. Okay, so I've kind of got this entire thing done. So at the end you can notice that all three of these, let me change the zoom on this a little bit. You notice that all three of these are still coming out at the same time. What you want to do is what we did before, but backwards. So because we want the top ones to we want the top ones to go away first. To maintain the cascading effect, we want to go back 5 frames, select both keyframes for the middle one, and bring them back. And then for the top one, we go back 5 frames again, bring them back. So then in the end, you should have something that looks like this. Oh. Should have something that looks something like that. And then when it comes out, just like that. Just like our name tags. Now, when you're actually using this in practice, so what you want to do, I told you earlier that you can set it to any length more than 5 seconds. What you want to do is you see this little blue end thing that I just dragged back, and what you want to do is you hold shift while you drag it, move your playhead to 5 seconds, and then you hold shift while you drag that blue thing all the way back until it clicks. Well, I guess not really clicks, until it snaps onto your playhead. You want to hover over it until it says work area, right click, trim comp to work area. There you go. So when you're actually using this, what you want to do is file, export, and then you do add to, you actually don't actually need to add to Adobe Media Encoder queue. So okay, after a little bit more off-camera research, turns out you actually do need to do this in Adobe Media Encoder, so make sure you have that installed too. So you want to hit file, export, add to Adobe Media Encoder queue, and that should fire up Adobe Media Encoder. If it doesn't, you can plug it yourself. And it will take just a second to open up Adobe Media Encoder. And there it is. So maybe it already added to the yeah, alright, awesome. So basically, you change the we want to change this preset down here to PNG sequence. Right here, PNG sequence with alpha. I want to click that. And move this. You don't want the H.264 version. So now you have the PNG sequence there. Here. Alright. Okay, so once you have Media Encoder open and everything is ready to go, all you have to do is just hit the little green triangle and it should start exporting right away. By the way, make sure you select PNG sequence with alpha down over here in the preset browser. If you don't select with alpha, it won't export with a transparent background, and when you put it on things, you're going to be very sad because it's going to come up with a black background. Alright, now that it is done, you go into whatever video editor you happen to want, and you just navigate over to the file, PNG sequence, check that, hit import, and then go over to your whatever you happen to want to use as your video, and then you just drag it all on top. So as you can see, when I dragged it into my timeline, it actually, came in as a 10-second clip instead of the original 5 seconds. So what you all you have to do is right-click, time stretch, and change the stretch factor to 50. Changes it to 5 seconds long. And you have it at the correct length. There you have it. So the name tag is now on screen. So when it comes in, because you know exactly when it comes in, at 1 second and 10 frames, you can create text layers and... Oh, okay, that is not a good code. I'm gonna go ahead and answer that. Hold on. You can go ahead and type in anything you want here, just like that. And then I usually like to do a 5-ish frame fade. So you click into here, open up the arrow down to transform, you click this little stopwatch thing on opacity and that turns on time frames. Set it to 0% here, and just move 5 frames over, set it to 100%, and there you have it. So now text fades in, you need to make sure it fades out before all this stuff starts leaving. So it takes 40 frames for stuff to start leaving, so at 420, haha, funny joke. You want to start fading things out. Just like that. And your final project should look something like that. Alright, that was an experience. Thanks for bearing with me. Screen record was being very annoying and taking up a lot of my resources, so After Effects crashed a lot, so there will be a lot of cuts in the video, as you have seen, but it is what it is, and you can't really do a whole lot about that. It's a pretty good computer, but it still likes the tank when it comes to screen recording. But hopefully this taught you enough to at least fill in the blanks yourself and figure out the rest in terms of the name tag, and hopefully I'll see a couple of these floating around in your guys' videos.